you're fighting crime with bots and going on and saying no, and they say yes you are, no you aren't.
In fact, there's been a few times where the generative AI platform has hung up on us.
Did it hurt your feelings?
I think we hurt its feelings.
So today we have Alan Silberberg, who runs Digijaks. Digijaks and Olmsted Williams Communications created a partnership last year because one of the things that we needed as an agency was a way to help our clients who were getting creamed online, either in search engines or on social media, and enter the brilliant Alan Silberberg. The question all of my clients is asked is, how do we get the CEO's name or the company name, the bad news, off the internet, or at least on page 3 or 4, or is 3 or 4 too much to ask?
It really depends on the name of the person, the situation of what's going on. Generative AI has changed a lot of what people thought of in terms of search and SEO, because now often the first thing you see when you search something is actually this generative AI thing kick in, and that's usually the first thing that you're seeing. So that's also changed a lot of this. But basically, we look at what words are being used against the person, what images are being used against the person. Where is this coming from? Is it coming from a publishing source? Is it coming from a little blog somewhere? And then also kind of what's the intent sometimes, right? Because if we can understand that, then we can really work with clients using semantic language and some of our trade secrets as a way to position them either using the content that they already have and control, or using that in addition with other new content that we might help them create that's specifically tailored to the needs at hand.
So what does that mean? Like their website content,
It could
articles?
be.
What?
It could be Twitter. It could be LinkedIn. It could be YouTube videos. It could be a combination of those things. It could be a new website or a series of new websites that we might create depending on what is actually going on. Sometimes it's about telling a story in a different way, as you know, and sometimes it's about really looking at like, okay, you're being hit here by an artificial intelligence tool that's really there's no humans involved here at all. So how do we deal with that specifically versus someone just constantly putting your name in blogs and posting them, which is there's different reactions to both. The AI space has made it so that our responses have to be very nimble. Well, they always have been, but we have to be even more so now because everything changes so rapidly.
So let's think about it in terms of, we've worked on a number of clients together that have faced reputational damage because of lawsuits, and these lawsuits are ongoing. They can be for years. What are the recommendations? I mean, you have us do some things, but what are your, top 5, 10 recommendations that companies need to?
Well, I think number one, I mean, I've said this a lot, and it kind of people. I think it surprises people when I say this because they expect there to be a big technical answer. But the number one thing really is who's the audience that you're trying to address with reputational changes or reputational adjustments using search engines and social media as part of those tool sets. Are you reaching to investors? Are you reaching to your board of directors? Are you reaching to your consumers? To the regulators who maybe are overseeing your industry? So just understanding that audience sometimes is key to beginning the whole reputational repair or additions to someone's reputation. And a lot of times it's not even such a big thing. Sometimes it's minor adjustments here and there, right? Sometimes it's really big things where you have to start again and sort of tell a whole new story. We try to keep it as simple as possible. But the general theory that we go on is that when you're dealing with a reputation attack, you're dealing with information about your name or your company's name coming at your organization or yourself from multiple different angles. So it's coming from search, it's coming from social media, often it's coming from other websites. Sometimes it's coming from tailored websites specifically in your name or in your company's name designed to take you down, like a reputation disaster website, so-and-so.com targeting so and so. And
And I think typically the CEOs that I'm dealing with at that, second when everything seems to be going wrong, they just don't want these bad stories or bad news the first thing you search when you Google the name of the company or you Google their name. So they're always saying, how do we get this off Google? And
Yeah, so it
it's a
really
big,
depends a
big
lot on,
question.
but it depends a lot on their digital presence already. So if this is a company that maybe has had no experience using social media and they had only had like a brochure website that didn't really do much, it's a big leap to go from that to a crisis communications reputation response and suddenly being able to generate a lot of content and do. But for a company that maybe has a full crisis communications team and is trained and drilled for it and has a number of social media accounts and maybe more than one website, they're actually more capable of sort of jumping in, but that doesn't mean they have all the answers. They might have some of the tools, but often they're looking at it from either a lawyerly perspective or a very closed minded perspective because that's only the thing that they know. And it's usually not a criticism. I'm not making any criticisms. People in these types of crises are facing both financial issues, mental and physical stress issues, as well as for many people they're afraid of being fired, frankly, or getting divorced or having their business partner do a business divorce because of something that happens.
Well,
So
as you
people,
know, we typically get brought in, and then the first thing they want is PR to kind of reverse the course. And that's usually when I call you and say, okay, let's work in tandem. And there's things that you want public relations to do to support you. And
definitely.
so maybe
And
talk a little bit about that. And then can we expect within what period of time to get some of these bad news stories that have come out, say from a lawsuit, to page 2 or page 3?
yes, I mean, depending on who it is and how famous they are. I mean, to answer this last question first, yeah, we could see very rapid results in a few weeks. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, 6 weeks, depending on how famous the person is or how much daily press the issue's catching. But yeah, in many cases, we want to use your company to be able to help leverage interviews or to be able to create new interviews or position content in a different way where you can actually speak to reporters before it's being written and help to guide some of that message. And then what we try to do is coordinate from a keyword and from a semantic language perspective so that we're kind of saying the same thing. On one hand, you're doing it through the PRs and interviews. On the other hand, we might be doing it through digital content medium. That could be textual, it could be social media, it could be video, and then we're trying to bring those two things together so that the message of the client is really resounding from multiple different sources. The thing about search that most people don't realize, it's not really about how many times you click on something. It's almost never about that. It's really about what's being published, who's publishing it, where's it coming from, what are the sources, and then how do you get around that. So part of it is you actually have to be your own publisher in a way. You have to deal with a social media attack on social media. You have to deal with a website attack by also using a website in addition to other things as well.
I remember you telling me once, I was like, oh, they want to try to get this buried into page 3 and 4. And you said, look, let's just get it to page 2. And that's really sufficient. Can you elaborate on that? Because you think, oh, bury it. But how many people go to page 2?
There's three reasons, and that's a fantastic point. The first reason is most people nowadays, it doesn't really matter where they are, government, business, personal, they begin their search on their mobile phone, almost always. Now, if they find something that they really like, they'll either email it to themselves or send it to themselves or bookmark it. So you're talking about a much smaller screen right away. Okay, so people, and then if you tie that with many studies, technical studies that have shown that most humans stop a search for Google or Bing, Yahoo, it doesn't matter which search engine, um, about 2/3 down the first page,
No.
unless they find something super interesting or
Right.
super crazy, or they're doing a forensic audit or they're a law enforcement person. Most times the search just stops somewhere around the bottom of the first page. When you put all those things together, the chances of most of these things most people's search getting past the second page is pretty low.
Can you get rid of the Twitter post? And
Um,
can you do you work on Wikipedia pages?
We try not to because Wikipedia is like an endless hell of
Yes.
edits. So the minute you start, you're in it no matter what.
So that's not something you do necessarily.
Twitter is an oddball. If the account using it is using it a lot, they're going to show up in search. If it's a small time account that's just been started, when it has 22 followers and they have 20 digits as their name, most likely that's not going to really show up in search unless they're using specific hashtags like the brand name or the name of the person. It's when you start using hashtags. It doesn't matter whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. A hashtag is basically an old school way to tell Google to follow this item and to connect it to the dots of search. And so when you start seeing hashtags being used in someone's name or in the brand name of a company, that's when it definitely becomes much more dangerous. But generally, you cannot remove a Twitter post unless it's something that's defamatory or where you can prove there's something wrong, like illegal or trademark violation or copyright violation.
The thing that I love about what you do is you can sometimes dig in and find out who's attacking you.
Attribution, that's called.
Okay, right. Attribution. So that's one of your superpowers, right?
Yeah, I mean, as an incident responder for both cybersecurity and reputation attacks, knowing who is attacking you is often the most important thing you can. Obviously, what they've done, the damage, and that's almost secondary. Because if you know who's doing it to you, you can often figure out how to stop it. It's not just ChatGPT. Remember that there's also the Google version that's called Bard. There's a number of private versions of generative AI. You see them on websites all over the place now. And so we have learned how to instruct generative AI to reject information that we can prove is false.
Can you get
and then
rid of?
and then it actually removes it from it, but it's a process of going back and forth
Interesting.
with the ChatGPT or Bard using a generative AI engineer creating these prompts, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and saying you're using a source that's wrong, or that source is not credible. But in the case of let's say a government lawsuit against an individual where the publisher is a government agency, that's not going to work.
Right.
Because you can't tell this thing that's going to go look for actual facts. That's not an actual fact. What you can say is that fake fact that you think is a fake fact is a fake fact because what here? Right. You can't.
So you're fighting crime with bots and going on and saying no, and they say yes you are, no you aren't, yes you are, going back and forth.
If we could do screenshots of some of these conversations that we've had back and forth with generative, it's absolutely hilarious. Actually, in fact, there's been a few times where the generative AI platform has hung up on us.
Did it hurt your feelings?
I think we hurt its feelings.
Well, that's a wrap, Alan. I'm so glad to have had this conversation. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.